Been a busy day for Chris Sutton. He directed his anger towards Todd Cantwell earlier, but today it's jelly and ice cream for him as he's talking about a coded message that Brendan Rodgers has apparently sent the Celtic board, because he says it wasn't meant for the fans, it was meant for the board. Welcome back to Fog Football, and let's dive into it now. Sutton, he's a wee bit late to the party with his column here because it's actually more focused on Celtic's performance against Man City. Of course, they play Chelsea later tonight. Which we will review on the channel, 11 o'clock. Late kick-off at 9.
Does anybody want some breaking news though?
Yeah, go for some breaking news.
Ayr United, Scott Brown are officially at the League Cup because they bottled it against Bucky Thistle, only winning by 3-2 when they needed to win by 4-2.
They've absolutely bottled it because, I mean, we have hyped up for the past week. The Dundee United are out and they've been saved. Saved by the bell.
Yeah, anyway, let's get back to Glasgow.
Let's get back to Glasgow indeedio. But anyway, let's see what Chris Sutton said in his column here. He said, and I quote, by name-checking Chief Executive Michael Nicholson and Chief Finance Officer Chris McKay, when asked for the state of the play by Scottish newspaper journalists in America, it's not hard to think there was another message being delivered. Rodgers basically said he was doing his part with the squad and it was now over to them to deliver the new signings. I'm not sure it's applying a bit of pressure, but it's definitely a sense of, right, it's over to you guys. They do not need to get to work. Celtic have looked sharp in pre-season, but we all know they are still short in vital areas of the team. They have one striker on the books right now in Kyogo, and Rodgers says he wants to bring in two more. We know Adea is the main one, but he also wants to bring another one who is young, a young prospect, or even a lone player. You also look at left back, centre half, the midfield, and perhaps also out wide. End of quote for now. So, I said earlier that Celtic could pretty much go into the new season without signing anyone and they would probably still easily win the league. But I look at up front, Adea's not in yet, O's away. I think if they suffered an injury to Kyogo, there would be big problems. Would you agree with that?
Oh, they'd be in trouble, but I still think...
I mean, who else has Celtic actually got up front? It's the one part of the pitch where they are extremely light. I think last season Kyogo's injuries were quite good, considering he has that shoulder injury. The nagging one.
Yeah, good. He survived.
Yeah, he survived anyway. Are you going to survive?
I am going to survive. Right, let's talk about the video then. Let's go.
Yeah, I'm talking about his quotes. So what do you think? They need a striker?
Well, yeah, but we knew that anyway. I mean, you can't go into season with one striker and that's all they have at the moment.
And who are you looking at for Celtic to sign?
It's none of my business. They can sign who they want.
Do you think Adam Adea... You've been very vocal that Adam Adea is not good enough?
As long as it's not Lauren Shankland, if you let me get a word in, I'm alright.
So you don't want Adam Adea for Celtic? Is that good? Well, not that you want, but do you think they would want him?
If they want to go and waste like 9 million on him, I'd be happy enough with that, because I don't think he's that good.
And he went on to say, and I quote, he said on day one when he came back, he wants to make a proper fist of it in Europe, and that is going to take proper signings. There's no escaping the fact it was a disappointing performance in a fairly generous group. The Champions League is more vital than ever this season. There's real danger another poor campaign could have long-lasting damage with Scotland's coefficient on the brink of collapse. The new format with 8 games guaranteed should give Celtic more opportunity to collect points and perhaps even get to the knockout stages after Christmas. But the automatic spot in the group stage is about to go, and if there also runs again, then it might take a heck of a long time to come back. All that money in the bank won't be worth much if they're locked out of the Premier competitions in the continent for the foreseeable future, and that's a message for the Celtic board should be hearing loud and clear. So as you can clearly hear from Chris Sutton, he's pretty much writ off the league. He thinks they're going to win the league.
Right, Sutton might think that Celtic need to spend money to compete in Europe, but the spending money thing for Celtic is an issue because it all boils down to this. Right now, they are the best team in Scotland. Right now, they are pretty, I'd say, far ahead of Rangers, and they do not need to spend money. They don't need to spend crazy amounts of money. They don't need to spend the war chest in order to stay in front of Rangers or keep Rangers behind them. So when you don't need to spend money to beat your biggest rivals, then what is the point of needlessly spending that money? Now, people will say Celtic should spend money to try and compete in the Champions League. But let's be honest. You look at that £70 million war chest that they've got. If we're being completely real here, 70 million doesn't get you that much in European football. You look at Champions League teams, they're spending £70 million on one player. So Celtic could go this transfer window. They could easily, if they did spend that £70 million on bringing in a bunch of new players, that still might not even be enough to get them into the last 16. That might Celtic could spend they could spend £70 million on like 5 players and still not even win a game in the Champions League. That's just the reality of it. 70 million, yeah, you spend £70 million and you can dominate Scottish football with that. You spend £70 million, there's no guarantee.
There is no guarantee,
now,
right?
yes, would it make them better in Europe? Absolutely. But can you spend 70 million in the hope that you do slightly better in Europe? It's not even, you can't even make a case, well, if Celtic spend 70 million, they can push towards like a quarter final run or this or that. £70 million in the Champions League just isn't that much.
It's a drop in the water, but does that not, is 70 million not good enough though for them to even compete at least for a last 16 spot? Or I know it's a new format, whatever it is, 9th to 24th, blah blah blah. Is there certain managers out there that could make 70 million work with Celtic, and could Brendan Rodgers might not be able to make it work?
We need to be realistic here. Celtic aren't going to spend 70 million in one transfer. Just because you've got that amount of money doesn't mean you spend it, right? Celtic are not spending 70 million in one transfer window. That's just not going to happen, and it wouldn't happen if Rangers had the money, or if Hearts had the money, or if Aberdeen had the money. It just doesn't happen. Even the clubs that are super rich, they don't spend every single penny that they've got available to them. That's not how it works. So just because Celtic have 70 million, that doesn't mean they're spending 70 million. Now let's go with a realistic figure. Let's say 30, right? Let's say Celtic were going to spend 30 million. And whether they want to spend that on 6 £5 million players or 3 £10 million players, let's go 3 £10 million players. You put 3 £10 million players into the Celtic team, it doesn't automatically mean that you're going to be competing in Europe, especially if you don't spend that money, right? We've seen Celtic spend £5 million on multiple players. Like, you talk about 30 million, maybe bring in 6 £5 million players. Who's to say you're not bringing in a Barkas? Who's to say you're not bringing in a Bernabe and a Jetty? These players ain't going to magically make you compete in Europe. So, yeah, for me, if Celtic can just dominate Scottish football and continuously get into the group stages and guarantee themselves the Champions League money, I think the board are happy with that. I don't think the board are going to go out and spend insane amounts of money just to hope that they get slightly better results. So let's go and spend 30 million and maybe we can grab a win and boost the coefficient points a little bit. They're not going to do that.
No, they're not going to do that. And to end it, this is what Sutton said about the league. He says, as I said earlier, this was in reference, because we've already talked about the Todd Cantwell part earlier, but he says, and I quote, Celtic can't just think about the league as going to be a canter. They also have to think bigger. They probably do have enough, even now, to be too strong for most in Scotland, but they simply have to think about Europe. Rodgers didn't come back just to be top dog in Glasgow, no matter how satisfying it may be. I tell you what, Chris Sutton is pretty much on the verge of turning around and saying the league is over, and we're in July. Everybody's saying the league's over. It's pretty soul destroying, to be honest, but it's just the state. You know, you can turn around and say that, you know, Rodgers came back to compete in Europe, but are you trying to tell me when Rodgers was, you know, getting back with these talks with Celtic, they were actually like, here, you know, you're going to win the league, so we're going to give you X, Y amount of money to compete in Europe? They didn't. Rodgers came back to Celtic because it was an easy way back into like a top job in Europe. Is that not it? He didn't come back to Celtic to hope to compete in the Champions League. This is a guy whose, you know, reputation kind of went down a wee bit because he took Leicester up pretty much down and he left.
I think he came back to Celtic to get some titles on the board, get back to winning ways, improve his reputation and try and find his next big job.
Yeah.
Not saying the Celtic job isn't a big job, but I mean, in terms of like a big league, I think Brendan Rodgers probably still wants to be in the Premier League, and he might think that going back to Celtic, spending a few seasons there, and you know, undoing the damage to his reputation that he maybe done at Leicester. I think Brendan Rodgers believes that I can go back to Celtic, win a few easy league titles, maybe have a slightly better display in Europe than I've had previously, and that'll be enough to get me a call whenever there's a job going at like a West Ham or, you know, something like that in the Premier League. I think you're kidding yourself if you believe that Brendan Rodgers is coming back. Oh, he's going to do 10 in a row this time. I don't think Rodgers will be at Celtic.
No,
10 seasons.
I can't remember what deal he signed. Was it a 3-year deal? I think he'll see the contract, then he'll leave.
I think the key to being at Celtic or Rangers for a long time is by actually not dominating and not winning all the trophies. For me, someone that it's different back in the day because there was like less money involved, but in this current climate at football, 2024, I don't think you can win 3-4 league titles in a row and dominate your opposition and stay in the job because you're going to attract interest. See if Ange came in and let's be honest, he was like rivaling Rangers, but he wasn't dominant. He'd probably still be in the job.
Yeah.
But if you come in now and you're so much better, then you're just going to attract interest for other clubs. So I think for someone to stick around, 10 in a row will not be done by one manager. I don't see how it happens.
And we've seen it with Gerrard, though. If Gerrard continued to be, second fiddle to Celtic, he wouldn't have got the move to Villa. It's because he won the league.
Yeah, I just don't think... I'm not saying Celtic or Rangers can't do 10 in a row, but I don't think it's going to be done by the single manager because I just don't see how a manager wins 5-6 league titles and doesn't get offered a better opportunity with a club with more finances. So... yeah, I mean, people think that Rodgers coming here to do 10 in a row this time. I mean, he might contribute to 10 in a row.
Like he did the last one.
He might put like 2, 3, 4 titles in the bank, but he's not sticking around for 10 in a row.
No, he's not. And it's scary, guys. We're talking about 10 in a row, but the real season is back. Seeing you've got Boyd and Sutton talking again, their wee gossip columns, that's when you know it's back, don't you?
Back.
It's back. Strap in. It's back.